The first thing I did the next morning was check the news to see if there was any chance of a storm coming into town. If the caller was correct, there should be a storm coming tomorrow, but the news channel stated that the rest of the week was supposed to be clear skies with no chance of rain. Of course, the weather predicted on the news never applied to Windwasher for the most part, but based on past weather patterns, if there was no rain in the city, then there definitely would not be any rain in Windwasher. Any change in the weather that occurs always happens in the city first, and even then, it still might not affect the town. It was as if Windwasher was in a completely different location sometimes, or covered in a dome. I walked outside to check the weather myself, and everything seemed normal. No differences in the wind, no clouds in the sky, and no change in temperature. I constantly checked outside throughout the day, and checked the news again. Nothing seemed to be changing, so as the day went on, I started relaxing more. However, I could not be completely at ease. Even when the day was nearly over, I still felt like I had to check the weather. Richard, Elizabeth, and Suzanne had been at my house since noon, and we planned to have a sleepover. I ignored them most of the day due to me worrying about the weather. "Did anything change?" Henry asked me after I walked inside for the 14th time that day. "No," I responded. "I just don't see why you can't just look out the window," Richard stated. "You're being ridiculous, Thomas," Suzanne added. "You've been checking for changes in the weather all day, and nothing has changed. It's 10:30. You need to relax." "I'm relaxed now," I replied. "I just wanted to check one last time." I sat next to Suzanne on the couch and started to watch the movie they had on TV. "What's this movie about?" I asked. "We already told you like a dozen times," Richard replied, annoyed. I forgot. "It's about a kid who lives in a world that is ruled by a vicious dictator with magical powers." "Sounds boring." "It's not," Suzanne said. "It's really good." "Thomas just doesn't think it's interesting because there's magic involved," Richard stated. "Not true," I responded. "I'm okay with magic. It's just a movie. I know it can be fictional." "Oh, this is a good part," Suzanne said. "The main characters are going to try to overthrow the dictator." "That's not what's happening," Richard replied. "Let's just watch." We all stopped talking and focused on the movie. After about a minute of watching, I fell asleep. "Hey," Suzanne said to me as she slightly shook my arm back and forth to wake me up. "What is it?" I asked. "The movie is over." "Oh, sorry. I fell asleep." "I see that. Did you see any of it?" "Not really." "Well," Richard started saying, "you don't know what you missed out on. You're just gonna have to watch it some other time." "He can watch it on our next date," Suzanne stated, and gave me a kiss on the cheek. "What do you guys want to do now?" Henry asked as he stretched his arms and yawned. "I'm kind of tired right now," Elizabeth answered. She also yawned and stretched her arms. I looked at the clock. It was now 11:40 p.m. I decided to go outside one last time. "Where are you going?" Henry asked as I walked towards the door. "Outside," I answered while I was opening it. "Thomas, I think it's obvious there isn't a storm coming." "Yeah," Elizabeth said, agreeing with Henry. "The news channel would have brought it up by now." I stopped with my hand on the doorknob, about to go sit back down, until Richard stood up. "It won't hurt to check one last time," Richard said with a smile on his face. He walked to the door and waited to follow me out. I looked up to the sky and Richard did too. The night remained cloudless with no wind. Richard was smirking as I looked at my phone. It was 11:56 p.m. "You know," Richard started saying, "it was kind of funny watching you worry all day. But clearly you're being a little too paranoid. Let's just go back inside." As we both turned to walk back in the house, the temperature dropped about 10 degrees and the wind took off like a leopard chasing its prey. It was going speeds I never felt before while living in this town. I looked back up to see dark clouds now tainting the night sky. I was stunned by how fast everything changed from peaceful to disastrous in the blink of an eye. I could tell Richard was just as shocked as I was. We stood still until it started raining heavily. What happened out there? Henry asked as I struggled to close the door from the intense wind. He was confused to see me and Richard wet all of a sudden. It's storming out there, Richard replied loudly. What? Elizabeth and Suzanne questioned at the same time. It just started raining, I answered as I pointed towards the window. Whoa, wait, Henry said, chuckling nervously. That's not possible. There were literally no clouds all night. Tell that to Mother Nature, Richard stated. She obviously doesn't care about what's supposed to be impossible. Everyone became silent when lightning flashed through the window, which was followed by a loud clap of thunder. This is insane, Suzanne yelled out as she started to cry. We're all going to die. I quickly ran to her side to comfort her. I could feel her body shaking as she hugged me. We're going to be okay, I said. It's just a normal storm. A normal storm? Henry asked in disbelief of my words. I don't think a normal storm would just show up in 5 seconds. There hasn't been a storm like this in 30 years. I didn't know how to respond, so I just sat on the couch, still holding Suzanne. Just then, our dad came downstairs. Is everyone all right? He asked. We're fine, Dad, I responded. No, we're not, Richard replied. Mother Nature is trying to kill us. Calm down, Richard, my dad said. It's just a thunderstorm. We're all safe as long as we stay inside. Suddenly, another flash of lightning happened, and the power went out. My dad grabbed a few flashlights we could use to see, and started a fire in the fireplace. He even put some candles up around the house. We all sat around the fireplace quietly as we heard the rain and wind pounding against the house. There were frequent flashes of lightning and loud claps of thunder that made us all jump. What are we going to do? Henry asked in a dull tone. We just have to wait for the storm to end, our dad responded. How long do you think it will last? Elizabeth then asked. Not sure. Hopefully it will go away as fast as it came. Doubt it, Richard said. It's obviously gonna stay until we die. Richard, Mother Nature isn't out to get you, or any of us. I know it's hard to believe a storm could happen around here, but climate change does happen. Does climate change make thunderstorms happen in 5 seconds? Storms can come in very fast, and sometimes we just can't predict them. Trust me, I've been around for quite some time, and lived in a few different areas. This isn't too out of the ordinary. It didn't seem like Richard believed what my dad said, but it made me feel a little better. We waited patiently in silence for the storm to end. Suzanne laid against me with her eyes closed, trying to fall asleep. Elizabeth did the same as she laid on Henry. A long time went by, and yet, the storm showed no signs of letting up. The wind and rain still slammed against the house, and the lightning strikes were still frequent. Everyone eventually fell asleep except me and my dad. I checked my phone to see 4 hours had went past already. That entire time, I'd been thinking about the call that I got that night, and tried to imagine who the caller could have been. I started to feel water on my feet, and I could tell everyone else could as they started to wake up. Why are my feet wet? Elizabeth asked, still sleepy. The house must be starting to flood, my dad responded. This town is somewhere in a ditch, and there's no storm drains. It's not prepared for large rainstorms like these. So we're going to drown? Suzanne asked as she started to cry again. No, I doubt the water will get that high. We just have to go upstairs. He stood up and turned on his flashlight. Follow me. We did as he said. He guided us to his room and laid out a large blanket for everyone to sit on. It's the end of the world, Richard stated as he buried his face in his arms. It sounded like he was about to cry too. You're over-exaggerating, I responded, trying to keep calm. No, he's not, Henry said with a blank stare on his face. We're all going to die. He had an even duller tone than before. It sounded like he had given up on life already. It's just a normal thunderstorm. Oh, please, Thomas, Richard said, lifting his head. His voice sounded dull like Henry's now. We all know this isn't a normal storm, and you need to stop trying to trick yourself into believing it is. He started staring at the wall and began laughing hysterically. It was like he was possessed. Thomas is right, my dad stated. We all looked at him. I know none of you have probably ever experienced a storm this severe, but we just need to stay calm. The storm will be over, and once it is, I'm pretty sure the meteorologist will explain how the storm happened and went undetected. But like I already said, weather can be unpredictable, and that's normal. We just gotta do something to pass the time. Like perhaps tell some stories. You mean like scary stories? No, I mean like happy or funny stories. I can start. We all became silent. This happened about 6 years ago. Henry should remember this too. My wife and I took him out to a bowling alley. It was something we could do occasionally, and I always had this special deal. If the three of us could bowl 300 points all together, then I would take him out to a special restaurant. Of course I remember that day, Henry stated as he started to smile. We actually got 300 points and went to the restaurant. They had the best food I ever tasted. I agree. And even though it was very expensive, I still had to help this couple pay for their own food. They were a few dollars short, so I gave them the rest of the money I had. They were so grateful, and it felt great to make someone else's day better. Yeah, that's why I gave the homeless man the leftover food we were going to take home. I was so proud of you. Dad went over to Henry and gave him a pat on the back. I could see everyone starting to get happy. You can't talk about happy stories without bringing up Juthy, Richard said. Who's that? I asked. He's a cool guy who is about the same age as us, but he has a baby face and is kind of short, so you probably think he is a kid. He has long curly brown hair and brown eyes. That guy always knows how to lighten the mood, and is kind of funny. I would actually say he's a lot like me, but he's arrogant. And you're not arrogant at all, Henry said sarcastically and chuckled. Juthy is so nice, Elizabeth stated before Richard could speak again. But he's really shy and not arrogant at all. Are we even talking about the same person? Richard asked. I mean, he's not the most outgoing person, but I wouldn't call him shy. He's crazy and loud. No, he's so sweet and quiet. He's also got some muscles. I agree, Suzanne said, and he's very smart. Well, if you think he's so great, I started saying, feeling jealous, then why don't you be his girlfriend? He's not my type. Plus, I don't really talk to him. Which house does this Juthy guy live in? I've never seen him before. That's 'cause he doesn't live in this town, Richard responded. He lives in the next town, just north of here. But that's almost 2 miles away. So how did you all meet him? He used to come by here to see his girlfriend in the city. So is he as nice as everyone in this town? Yes, Elizabeth answered. No, Richard replied. He's annoying. Richard and Elizabeth stared at each other. Just then, a drop of water hit my nose. Did anyone else feel that? I asked out loud. Feel what? Henry asked back. A drop of water. I felt another one hit my nose. I looked up. The roof was leaking small drops of water right on top of me. Our dad looked up too. That's gonna be a problem, he said, as he quickly ran to the bathroom to get a bucket and put it under the dripping water. After he did, another bolt of lightning struck down and hit a tree. We all glanced out the window to see the tree had caught on fire. Even though it was pouring rain, the fire didn't seem to be dying down very quickly. We are definitely going to die tonight, Richard said, sounding dull and depressed once again. We're going to be fine, Dad replied. We just have to keep ourselves occupied until the storm ends. It doesn't seem like it's ever going to end, Elizabeth stated as she wept. Henry wrapped her in his arms. The next few moments we all stayed silent as we looked out the window. The fire on the tree finally died out, leaving behind a burnt tree trunk. Right after that, my dad started telling another story. We all remained silent, trying to feel comfort again. Listening to my dad's stories worked for me, as I started to smile again and became tired.